Du lyssnar på Rörelserevolutionen med Grim Järnudd och Tom Englén från Change the Game.
Hej och välkomna till det här premiäravsnittet av Change the Games podcast, Rörelserevolutionen. Det som har hänt alldeles nyss är att vi har släppt datum och tema för vårt årliga evenemang Change the Game 2024, vilket blir rörelse som räknas. Och just det här temat, anledningen till att vi har det är för att det är ett försök att komplettera våra myndigheters rekommendationer om antal minuter och steg per dag. Och liksom också nyansera den här sägningen om att varje rörelse räknas. Vi tänker att de räknas olika mycket. Så vi tror att kvaliteten i rörelseupplevelser har stor betydelse och vi tycker att rekommendationer som till exempel att röra sig 60 minuter per dag får den naturliga frågan 60 minuter av vad då? Så ett utmärkt ramverk för att förstå och skapa förutsättningar för intressanta och meningsfulla rörelseupplevelser är att titta på motivationsförutsättningarna. Och vi ska göra det idag utifrån självbestämmandeteorin, self-determination theory. Och det är någonting som dagens gäst har mycket bra koll på. Varmt välkommen hit, Paul Davis.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Paul Davis är professor vid institutionen för psykologi vid Umeå universitet. Och han har specialiserat sig på kopplingarna mellan emotioner, mellanmänskliga relationer, välbefinnande och prestation inom en mängd olika fysiska aktiviteter och sammanhang. Så som exempelvis med professionella idrottare och coacher, inom försvaret, med professionella artister, polisen och bland annat med patienter med kronisk smärta. Och det här är information som vi har hämtat från din bio på LinkedIn, Paul. Och den är översatt och förenklad. Men någonting som jag läste där ordagrant löd så här att du använder en holistic approach that focuses on the health and wellness of individuals to optimize performance and interpersonal relationships. We experienced that a common opinion is that you either focus on health and wellness or performance. But it sounds here like you're almost describing health and wellness like a prerequisite to performance. Could you explain that a little bit further, please?
No, absolutely. My perspective is that we need health as the foundation, as the starting point to be able to realize or optimize our potential beyond that. If we don't have good mental, physical, social health, then we're already starting from a deficit to inhibit our development. So it's the foundation, it's the groundwork, it's the solid stepping stone towards reaching our potential, as I say, and high performance. So you must have health before you have high performance. If you don't, then you might have short-term success, but it won't be a sustainable situation. And I also think that part of the health, as I say, is physical, mental, social, but it's also about a healthy perspective. And that's realizing that we need to live life in a sustainable way is the key phrase these days, but in a way that has value and passion and something that we connect with. Part of the foundation is the roots that hold us together. So having a healthy perspective also helps when the wind starts to blow and the weather gets difficult, that we have that as a solid grounding for later when we are trying to realize health and high performance in difficult, uncomfortable circumstances.
Good. Jag kan bara säga det att vi har ju den här podden nu både på svenska och engelska då, it's a mix.
Swinglish, yeah, perfect.
Maybe we can just short tell us a little bit about your background, how you came here to Umeå and why we can have this conversation in a mixed Swedish and English style.
Yeah, I'm as the accent maybe reflects, it's somewhere over the middle of the Atlantic because I've spent my time initially growing up in Canada, where I was born to as a first-generation immigrant to parents who did come from Europe initially. So I had that experience growing up. In the middle of Canada, Manitoba, home of Neil Young and the Winnipeg Jets and things of that nature. So in a lot of regards, it's kind of similar to a Swedish background, the remoteness, the winters, the seasons, and obviously the passion for winter sports and things of that nature. But as I say, my folks came from Europe, so I did my postgraduate PhD and MSc in the UK. Taught there, fell in love, had a family, and funny enough, met a figure skater in the UK rather than Canada. And through our shared passion for winter sports and things of that nature, after a invited lecture up here in Umeå, having already collaborated with a couple of people on the area of emotional exhaustion and burnout in coaches and athletes, I came and gave a talk, and it reminded me of Northern Ontario, Canada, and made the comment that, oh, if there's any other jobs, let me know. And careful what you wish for. They came back, and they've managed to find two, because Louise Davis, my wife, who also works in the psychology department, her research centers around coach-athlete relationships and relationship forming, and how that's very important. I'm sure we'll talk about of helping to motivate people to be active. So the two of us now have lived in Umeå for 7 years and spend our weekends on the ski hills or driving the kids, like most sport parents, to underwater rugby and sports of that nature as well.
Okay, so let's talk a bit about self-determination theory. So if you just give us a basic introduction about the intrinsic part of motivation, extrinsic part of motivation, which is maybe the basic introduction of self-determination theory. What's the differences, and why is it important to know about them?
Sure. I mean, self-determination theory is about motivation. It is trying to help us understand why people do things a certain way and what drives them towards it. It helps us to understand our why. I mean, that's a bit of an idea we have now, is find your why, which then at the center informs the how and what we do to pursue that. And self-determination theory works nicely and is applied across many different domains, from education, leadership, health, behavior change, probably most interestingly for us within sport. And it helps to explain how people either do things for external reasons, whether it's punishment or reward, or internal reasons for the actual activity. So it's a continuum from two polar opposites of extrinsic outside to intrinsic personal joy and enjoyment in the activity. And as the continuum goes between the two, it helps us understand the role of the individual and how they interact with their environment from, as I say, one extreme is, well, even off the charts would be no motivation. And that unfortunately is a factor for a lot of people, particularly when it comes to things like physical activity. Why would I choose to do something that is uncomfortable and associated with pain, and perhaps in the background maybe an unhealthy school sport environment where socially it was a case of having people forcing them to participate and experiencing a lack of joy and connection to physical movement in that sense. So as we get on to the extrinsic to intrinsic motivation continuum, as I say, the first level is it's a have to. I don't want to, I have to do it, either to not get punished or to get the external reward. And then we move up and it starts to become more personal in terms of we recognize, okay, it's important. You know, I do it because it's a good activity relating to it will be, in another context, good for my personal development, my curriculum vitae. I take the course because I know it goes on my CV and it helps towards the job that I want. Next up, maybe it's a case of I recognize that it's important for the things that I think are important. So as a coach, I know it's good to know about these sort of topics. And so that relates to my identity. I'm a coach, I should do that. And then the most sort of, shall we say, pure in terms of why we choose to do something is that we do it because we enjoy it. We are curious about trying something new. And when we do it, we find an element of surprise and enjoyment just in the pursuit of doing the activity. Not because, for example, in running, it's not because I'm doing it because I'm healthy. It's not because I'm doing it to make myself strong. It's actually the joy in just going out and running and being physical and seeing where I end up that day. That's the reason why I get out there and go for a run.
Okay, so the importance of be aware of these two types of motivations as a leader or any type of leader in the society, actually. because I've learned that it's quite a few cons with the intrinsic motivation to get conditions in place for that. So can you tell us a little bit about the psychological needs we have to meet in order to create that conditions?
Yeah, underpinning the whole theory is the idea that we have basic psychological needs as humans in all domains of life. And I find it easiest to remember those as A, B, C as the first sort of letter. A relates to autonomy. Do we have choice in what we do? Is it I do it because I want to versus I have to in that sense? I do it because it's what's interesting and I can decide how long, what type I do. So autonomy, self, freedom of will, choice. B relates to the belonging. I feel like I'm part of something. I identify with the group or with the idea it's a sport that I value, and I feel an interpersonal connection. Whether it's just with a teammate or whether it's a coach or whether it's something bigger of what it represents. So I know the Vasaloppet's coming up soon, and that is a historical, traditional activity in Sweden that's recognized as having a fabric in the culture. And I recently spoke to somebody who was a bit nervous about doing it and looking to find, well, where do I find my motivation when it's difficult? And we talked about how it's an opportunity to feel connected to something bigger, the history of the Vasaloppet, or the connection to family who might not be beside you on the ski track, but you know that they're cheering for you at home. And so that's a sense of belonging to other people and a connection that as humans, we're social creatures. So we want to feel like we belong in the environment. The C relates to our perception of competence. We don't do things that we fail at all the time. If we do it too often, we experience a sense of learned helplessness. We like to feel positive reinforcement and feel that we can be successful in the things that we undertake, that we are able to influence and feel an experience where we have some element of control in doing things we are successful with. So those are the autonomy, belonging, and competence, the ABC. And I'm more interested now almost in the D, and I think of that as the opportunities to find delight. And delight comes from the pure enjoyment with an element of surprise. And so that delight means that we are curious, we explore, and as a result of that, we experience joy in what we find. So we can put that together as the now additional psychological need, that when we get fulfillment of pursuit of new activities, this curiosity and the delight we find through exploration is another one that I think a lot of people are looking for now after periods of being cooped up and told to stay home and stay in place, that now we need something that pulls us out into the environment to be more curious and explore.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm really interested. Yeah, that just sparked a funny thought in my mind to add the D, and then like eventually we'll have a full alphabet.
Well,
like we can find a lot of
complex people,
good stuff to add there. But I'm also thinking that one of the beauties of the self-determination theory and the building blocks for intrinsic motivation is how hands-on it is. Like it's quite simple with three aspects that we, Tom and I, when we're meeting sports coaches or pedagogues in different contexts who are curious to learn about a new way to approach creating positive movement experiences for people in different contexts, that this is something that is helpful.
Yes.
But we're curious about if we try to focus in a little bit on practice design, or what a task might look like if the building blocks of intrinsic motivation that you just mentioned have been considered. Like, do you have any practical examples of what that might look like?
Yeah, it's nice because there's often a gap between theory and practice, academia and what it's like in the real world. And as you've highlighted, Grim, it's that opportunity where we can answer the so what question about the research. And coaches relate and connect with it because they see their role in their behavior. You can either be an autonomy supportive coach or a controlling coach. And often I think coaches have a thought that, oh, I'm the one who has to have the answers. I'm the one who has to say this is how training is going to go because they look to me as a leader. And what we do find is that when coaches are a little more vulnerable and open, it's a trade-off that the vulnerability leads to a power in the circumstance where the children or whoever is being led, it's not just with youth and parents, it's also seen in organizational work aspects as well. When you have a leader that supports their colleagues' autonomy, where they can explore and fill these basic psychological needs, then people will be more motivated in those environments, as compared to if you have sort of this is a controlling leader, a controlling coach who says we need to have these sort of extrinsic measures, objectives, key performance indicators of outcomes, then that takes the control and the autonomy away from people in that environment. So what we've recognized is that, to your point of a current example, is I'm part of an European Union Erasmus project where we're designing a mobile app to get adolescents more physically active. And it's purposefully called Move for Fun, with the intrinsic enjoyment motivation as the central feature. Because we recognize that we can't battle with Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or anything to try and get children away from their phones. We have to meet them where they are to then hopefully encourage them to explore wider, to enjoy quality movement experiences. So we've built in aspects of choice that the children have between different types of activities, but also the opportunity for them to design their own. So we might give the framework of, okay, we want you to play with other people. So there's the sense of belonging, do these opportunities in groups. And here's one way that it can be done. But what do you think is another way that you could move or make different rules or different aims of the game to promote the activity and also satisfy their basic psychological needs? So through the choice and through the social aspect, and also setting the right level of challenge, because we want something that is Goldilocks in the sense that it's not too difficult and it's not too easy, because we know that things are too easy, we don't keep our interest. You know, it's done, it's boring in that sense. Things are too hard, it's too challenging, then there's no competence, there's no success to be experienced. So adapting the activities you do to give individual levels of challenge, which is challenging in its own right when you work with large groups, but you set the different expectations and the measurements of success, and so that's why it's quite important where we start to provide. I mean, everybody wants feedback after they've done something. You know, to what degree was I successful or not? And quite often on the car ride home with children after the sport, the two central questions are usually, one, did you win? Well, that can go one way or the other, and it's not usually up to the child in the car. There's so many different factors with win-loss. And the second question is usually, did you score? In that sense, again, that's something that's beyond the control of the children and things of that nature. So if we reframe how we measure success to more about, you know, were you a good teammate, or, you know, how did you feel at the beginning of the match, and explore, or when it was tough at the end and you were feeling tired, those sort of activities, we can make a message of what's important. And it's not the wins or losses or scoring. It's the degree that the child was able to, whether you want to say persevere when it was difficult, or have good social connections, or what they felt like they did feel success or choice in. And those will create an environment where a child has more, or anyone, as I should say, has the opportunity to explore and feel like they want to try new things, get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because they will find reward in those adventures.
Yes, I like that idea about what we can reinforce and empower in the after activity conversation. I've thought about that a lot at home as well, about like, what did you learn today? did you have fun?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, try and steer the thoughts and focus towards those. Great. I thought we'd switch tracks a little bit. I'm finding myself speaking English now all the time. I might as well continue. and think together about environment design, because that is something that we're always trying to discuss parallel to activity design, because our surroundings have such a huge influence on how we think and feel and behave. And towards our disposition to move and choose to be active as well. So how do you think knowledge about the self-determination theory and intrinsic motivation factors, especially for example, landscape architects or city planning, could be expressed if they learned more about that? I don't know if you have any research experience from this field, or if you would just think out loud with us.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always a nice sort of, and a takeaway from the podcast is if you can look at the environment, again, through these, does it fulfill the basic psychological needs? Will children be able to choose what they do? Or is there only one thing you can do with that piece of equipment in the environment? I mean, the classic is you take children to even sort of things like the sculpture galleries or things of that nature, and they want to climb on things and use it in a different way because they feel like they have the freedom to do it differently. Similarly, and I think this is why the D that I'm proposing, the delight, the exploration of the environment, the curiosity. You know, if something you, upon first glance, feels very basic and not that inspiring, then there won't be the pull of the environment to explore and find out more about it. That's another distinction we make with motivation. Is this a sense of being pushed to do something, or is it a sense of being pulled in? So I think in the environment, if it pulls people into engaging the environment, you'll get a lot more activity and variation and exploration at a level where children will feel competent to do certain things. And I think that's important in terms of the planning that, again, the Goldilocks, it's not too challenging and it's not too easy, that if you can design it where, again, being used in different ways, people will be interested to see what they can do personally. And sometimes that takes a bit of encouragement and permission to be able to say that, you know, there isn't just one way to use this environment. And a part of it is about, you know, asking yourself to explore. And there's a lot of rules in life where sometimes we feel that we have to behave to cultural norms or to certain ways of doing things. And if there can be some sort of indication of permission, of autonomy provided in an environment, then I think that really encourages people to explore and try new things.
Okay. Vi byter perspektiv lite grann här och går från deltagarna, användarnas perspektiv till ledarnas perspektiv. The perspective of the leaders. Can we give you any example of when leaders has been empowered based on this theory to develop their leadership skills? If we start from the leaders of in the active environments, sports and schools and stuff like that. Have you any examples to share with us?
Yeah, there's a number of different places that we've tried to apply these principles, both here in the UK where I was previously. I think it's funny that at the moment the big headline news in the sports is that Jim Radcliffe, the owner of Ineos, has bought Manchester United. And interestingly, we started a project there called Go Run for Fun. That's Ineos, the company, sponsored. And what we set up there was, again, these opportunities for youth to experience the joy of running with school-based activity where the leaders would encourage kids to, yes, run a set course, but do it in different ways, was one way of providing opportunity there. Another one that we used to work with was Newcastle United football teams, their foundation. And we had a program that was looking to get youth in some pretty tough areas of Newcastle match fit was the idea. And that was a holistic sort of, it was about eating, sleeping, physical activity. And what they used then was, as they like to describe, the badge, you know, the emblem of the Newcastle United team was part of the pull, the kids' interest to some of these sort of basic behaviors that, well, eating right and sleeping is not the funnest thing. But what they realized through the leaders was that this is what your favorite players are doing. You know, it was a case of positive role modeling. And sometimes, I mean, it's not always that extrinsic's bad and intrinsic's good. There are moments where you have to, get the hook. You know, pull people in where they recognize that, okay, yeah, I see, and maybe it's slightly up and down the continuum of extrinsic, intrinsic. In the introjected, I see value in that. I connect with the football club in that sense. So if it's important to the players, then, you know, I recognize it's important to me because I identify with them there. And so we see that some of the leaders that were in the schools and helping with the Match Fit program, they would motivate the children to explore about these concepts because it related to their identity of the football club. And of course, that's a balance, again, from not going too far and, you know, in terms of that sort of sense. But it's the initial interest to the children there. So if we can make a connection with identity, then the kids recognize, oh, this is actually interesting and important then.
Another thought that if we go up one level in the system, looking on the leadership level there, if you think about for example, the recommendations that are spread out from governments all over the world actually right now about how much you should move as a human being and so on, and why. If you reflect a bit on that based on self-determination theory, do you think there are some potential in their message to be used, or is it the wag the finger message only, or what do you see? Do you see any, or do you see any shifts or improvements in the messages based on self-determination theory?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of scope to sort of help to promote the activity that underpins those targets. And I appreciate that it's at a population health level. And that's talking about measuring what matters. And to them, there is a very clear obesity, pandemic, physical inactivity, and we know the impact financially of the non-communicable diseases, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, things. And when that is equated at the population level of, you know, healthcare and things of that nature, you understand why it starts there. But it doesn't have to stay there at the individual level. My approach, as mentioned in the bio, is I'm very interested in people's emotional responses. So I'm quite interested in how can we make movement fun, because we very basically, we choose to do things that we enjoy and we avoid doing things that are uncomfortable, painful, and we don't enjoy. So if we can promote the intrinsic motivation, the enjoyment of the activity itself, then that will create a much more sustainable method of promoting physical activity versus the, you know, health cost benefit analysis. That's failed us. We know that physical activity is good for us. The research has told us that for decades. Similarly, we know that eating healthy is good for us, but it doesn't always feel as fun as it does to have the immediate satisfaction of, you know, choosing to do something short and easy in that sense. So if we can promote, and there are a lot of complex things about enjoyment and how we remember things or how we anticipate. There's a lot of factors there that if we can tweak those in some of the research we're doing now to promote how we remember activity as being more fun, it makes us want to do it more in the future. So we can, again, through fulfillment of the basic psychological needs, offering different types of physical activity. You know, to be fair, some of the guidance now is every movement matters. You know, each step counts towards health and physical activity there. So rather than just necessarily counting how many steps, if we can make the quality of each one of those steps a little better on a holistic level, chances are people will then take the next step and continue to be curious and interested and find fulfillment in physical activity rather than just, I need to get my steps in today, because that's not working for us at the moment.
Final part of our conversation here, I thought we should talk a little bit about the movement experiences, quality movement experiences, and the motivation part in aspect of sustainability. we have been talking about a bit about this before with you the latest months, and we both have been sparked the curiosity for the inner development goals, this new sustainability concept that's has been initiated from Sweden actually, and now rapidly spreading around the world. Can we give us your thoughts and reflection on that? How this relates? How can we connect this? Actions we're doing now to get people moving to saving the planet kind of actions. How can we connect those two big missions?
Yeah, I think at the center of the whole sustainable movement is we've got global problems, but they require individual solutions at that level. And that also addresses the idea of, well, I'm just one person, I do my little part. How does that really impact when we have the major industry polluters and things of that nature? And that is where we can help people feel, experience that they're contributing in a positive way that matters to them internally as well. I mean, the inner development goals are targeting aspects of the self where they're motivating people to explore their world and contribute in a more positive, sustainable way. And that's the interesting part, is it's not just sustainable environment, it's sustainable self. We have a big issue of exhaustion and burnout, or the other major issue at the moment, is the feeling of isolation and feeling lonely and things of that nature. And it's not saying that if we develop inner development goals that we won't feel connected to others. That's what we're trying to promote, is that when we find connection with other people with shared goals and purpose and things of that nature, that's where it reinforces and it gains energy through the connection. Emotion is a movement outward, and motivation is how we are driven to pursue things at a larger level. And the aspect of the inner development goals is connecting us to the external world. And it's helping people experience fulfillment of the basic psychological needs and develop themselves to be better contributors, but to feel more connection through the process. And I think it's quite nice is that it also provides a framework and a shared language where people recognize that, oh, actually, I feel and I sense these things as well. And when you can have that communication, shared language with other people globally, it starts with the individual and the inner development, but you know that others are doing it in a similar way that you can feel connection with. And the other thing is that, as you know, I attended the summit in Stockholm in last autumn, and this is being, as in good examples, is being applied within our major multinational organizations, particularly the ones based in Sweden, but globally as well, where IKEA and Volvo and Icebug and all these other corporations are recognizing that if we have this framework for our individual employees or how we conduct our business, then we know that that will have a wider positive impact as well. And similarly, and maybe not to be cynical in terms of a branding and seeing a connection that way, but it draws people to those organizations as well to know that that's something that is a priority for these organizations. And it's not just the approach of profit and shareholders, dividends and things of that nature, that there is a deeper personal connection to some of these concepts.
Ja, jag tror vi kommer titta mycket mer vidare på relationen mellan quality movement experiences och inner development goals. Och för de som inte är bekanta med inner development goals så kommer vi lägga en länk i avsnittsbeskrivningen så man kan titta närmare på det. Och det kanske kommer ett helt eget avsnitt just kopplingen däremellan, för det verkar som att vi tycker det är jättespännande hur kvalitativa rörelseupplevelser utvecklar många goda saker hos oss människor, det vet vi, men det här ger oss en lite mer nyanserad bild också och kan koppla ihop det med övrigt hållbarhetsarbete i vårt samhälle.
I think that's very important, is that, I mean, the quality physical movement is an opportunity to do this development where we gain embodied sort of experience. It's one thing to learn through reading and talking, but if we share a movement experience, that's something that really tests, shall we say, and helps the development. That's the beauty, I think, of sport, in the general sense is that it's life with the volume turned up. We have the good, the bad, and the ugly that happens within 90 minutes between the touch lines of a football or ice hockey rink. And within there, we can care passionately. We can work together as a team. We have to use all of these human behavioral aspects on something that really doesn't matter. I mean, the world doesn't change if the puck doesn't go in the net or not. But at the same time, we get permission to care passionately. So if we can use sport and movement experiences to work on important things like connection, empowerment, humility, respect for the earth and other people, then that's where we can actually try, fail, and develop and grow stronger through those sort of activities.
Beautiful, beautiful thoughts.
Yes, that was great. I almost feel like that was a good closing comment. But
you can't give me the last word.
No. I just share one last reflection, because I think that the self-determination is so powerful in that it nuances motivation, not only like a quantity, but also it can have different qualities. And I see a lot of similarities with our work of trying to promote physical literacy and use that as a compass to create positive movement experiences where we have building blocks that we believe are essential and important to create that strong disposition to value and choose to be active when opportunities present themselves. So that's really refreshing and compared to, like you mentioned, Paul, like more traditional health messages of move more, otherwise you get disease, but that doesn't work. So yeah, very, very happy to hear about it. Yeah, you have some closing words as well, Tom, right?
Yeah, it was very nice to having you here.
Pleasure, thank
as
you.
a very first guest in this podcast.
Set the bar low so others can get over.
I think it was a great introduction to self-determination theory. Och vill man veta mer om det här som vi pratar om idag, flera av de delarna förutom min development goals, så kommer det finnas i avsnittsbeskrivningen. Där finns också med information om vårt årliga event i september, där vi kommer som sagt jobba under temat rörelse som räknas, utifrån att vi vill ju, precis som podcasten säger, skapa en rörelserevolution, och vi tror vi kan göra det genom att anamma lite nya synsätt. Vi tror inte vi kan använda de synsätten som har skapat problemen, och vi tror att fysiska literacy och det vi kallar rörelserikedom är ett perspektiv vi har jobbat med, och en given del i det är ju self-determination theory, som är som en stor pusselbit och en stor förklaringsbit i den modellen. Då tror vi var i mål med första avsnittet. Tack för att du kom hit, Paul.
Tack.
Ja, tack så mycket.
Tack.